Welcome back to the Why Mindset Matters podcast. I'm Islana Loa. I'm an author, speaker, resilience mindset coach. I'm also a nurse, a midwife, and a mother of four. And if this is somehow the first episode of mine that you've found, I do want to start by providing a trigger warning. I do discuss the loss of my teenage daughter, Riley, to suicide. In the last week, we have had an extra layer of grief, and I almost wasn't going to do this episode, which would have been fine and everybody would have understood given the added layer of grief and trauma that we're dealing with at the moment. But it was pretty much my body keeping score that meant that I decided, no, okay, the topic has changed on what I would have talked about, but I actually need to do this episode. So we lost our dog. He was only 4 years old, prematurely last week and unexpectedly. But the extra layer of grief and trauma is that he wasn't just our dog. He was my daughter's dog who died. She passed away in the November of 22, and it was something that, as I say, was unexpected, but it was also dealt with by somebody who made the decision to put him down and then take him home and bury him without notifying the girls and I. And I can deal with the death. I can deal with the loss. Bodhi had a wonderful life and he was deeply loved every minute of his life. And if Riley needed him in the afterlife, I'm okay with all of that. I understand and appreciate that animals are here for a season. As much as we might want them to be here longer, I can appreciate all of that. What has exacerbated my complex PTSD after witnessing Riley's death is the fact that he was alive and I didn't get the chance to say goodbye. The fact that the decisions around whether he was buried or cremated were taken away from me. So I didn't see this coming. I didn't anticipate the way that this kind of sense of powerlessness would negatively affect me and how deeply and profoundly. And so I've spent the last week really trying to hold space for my grief and what that needs to look like and access help in the form of therapy and surrounding myself with the right kinds of supports and people and just taking my week quite slowly. But as I said, I've committed to 2 episodes a week, and it would have been completely fair and reasonable if I didn't do an episode or maybe 2. And I really could not get it done. I've been going about my days with just tears rolling down my face, just in shock. I think because I didn't get the chance to integrate this as a fact, because I wasn't a part of all of the decision making, I wasn't aware until it was all done and dusted, and that exacerbated the shock. Like I said, it's the inability to integrate. It's the fact that when Zali hasn't finished her dinner and I say to her, "You just give it to Bodhi, darling," and then I feel kicked in the guts because I have to realize again, oh, Bodhi's not here, he's gone. And so I have been struggling a little bit, but I woke up feeling quite run down today and as though I'm getting sick, and it made me realize a very valuable lesson, one I used to teach about, but also one I've been reminded of more recently when my daughter went through her first breakup. And I wanted to discuss that by diving into a discussion around how the physical toll that chronic stress takes on our bodies when we live in a constant state of fight or flight, and often without even realizing it, our nervous system ends up dysregulated and can stay dysregulated, and over time that impacts everything, whether we think it will or not. I'm telling you it will. It affects our immune system and our body's ability to heal. And this is the experience that I'm having because I had this unanticipated shock and trauma that I'm living with that has exacerbated my fight or flight, which was already at a level that is above and beyond what is normal for people. And I think the fact that I've spent most of my life in a degree of fight or flight because of trauma and just shitty circumstances, it became somewhere that I was very used to living. And so throughout my adult years, as I had learnt more about the nervous system and our fight or flight, but also that nervous system isn't just fight or flight or nothing. We have the opposite end of that scale being growth and protection and the relaxation response. And it is not as simple as we're either super relaxed and growing and healing or we're in fight or flight. I would tend to explain it in my workshops as more of a spectrum, and that sometimes things happen that shoot you straight down to fight or flight, like the night I found out about Bodhi, but other times there's things that just inch us down and down and down. And I would educate people to become aware of where they're at in the spectrum and what they can do to kind of edge themselves back down to that relaxation response where we are in growth and repair. And so having been shot straight down to the extremes of fight or flight, where I'm revving my nervous system. And this is on a background of I already don't sleep very well. I tend to relive Riley's death every night around bedtime because that's when it happened. Riley passed away by jumping off of my balcony 33 stories in the air without warning. Seemingly future-oriented kid, kindest kid you've ever met, gone without warning or explanation. And I had to go down and find her body. And when I was down there and screaming so loudly, my other two girls, who were 11 and 13 at the time, heard me from 33 stories up, and they came down and they saw her. Anyway, so that's the backstory of why I don't sleep well, and I pretty much don't sleep without melatonin. So life is a bit of a challenge in and of itself because of that, and because of the impact that my PTSD continues to have on my nervous system, which I'm working with my body in ways that facilitate self-care and try to kind of combat that, given that it's a part of my reality. But the exacerbation of it all because of the loss of Bodhi has just put me into this state where I couldn't even walk through the shops to buy groceries without tears rolling down my face. And I was, as I said, reaching out to a therapist and doing the things to try and get help, to try and just kind of de-escalate my nervous system. But in reality, if I'm honest with myself, I was trying to work out how to deal with the shock of it. I wasn't necessarily working hard enough to de-escalate that nervous system, to get it back out of that place where it just doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve you to buy this beautiful car that cost a fortune and then just rev the shit out of it, or, put your foot on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. And that's what it feels like, because you're not going anywhere when you're stuck in that kind of shock and trauma. Yeah, and you're just damaging it. Yeah, that's what you're doing. You're damaging yourself. And I'm not surprised, given all of that I woke up feeling unwell. And I'm going to explain why. My 16-year-old recently went through her first breakup. She made the decision for it. She knew that it was an okay and right thing for her, but it didn't take away the sting of that first heartbreak. And she was really, really sad. It was like her heart had been completely broken and was spilling all over the floor, and she was just tear-stained cheeks all the time. And we were doing our best to try and get her up and out of the house and taking her to the gym and, go get your nails done, darling. And also helping her understand the value of letting people know that you're going through something shitty. And when I would openly disclose it to people that I trusted, that were close to us, say in our, community at the gym or whatever, I would explain to Mia that we've all been through it. Letting people know that your heart is hurting gives them the opportunity to support you in ways that you might not even realize that you need it. And so we had this beautiful sense of support around her. We were doing things to try and help lift her mood and help her feel good. But regardless of all of that, she went and saw a counselor as well, but she was just, you'd turn around and she'd just be tears rolling down her face. She was stuck in that fight or flight, she just couldn't get herself out of there, and I couldn't help her either. It was just relentless. What ended up happening was she got sick. She got really sick, and it's winter here, and she was wiped. She could not get out of bed for 5 days. And I thought, being winter, oh my God, we were all going to come down with the flu. None of us got sick. And then I taught a workshop, and I shared a link that I hadn't watched myself in quite a while. And it was about how we've got our nervous system has either the relaxation response, where we're in growth and repair, or the fight or flight, and being the other end of the spectrum. And it talked about how incredible our immune system is, with all these little soldiers that form a boundary around us to protect us from bacteria and illness and disease. And that when we are in fight or flight, our nervous system is designed to protect us. And the kind of reaction that our nervous system has in fight or flight is the equivalent of the caveman days, if there was a lion or a bear in the room and going to rip our face off. And so our nervous system prepares to either stay and fight the tiger or the bear, or run or freeze and hope it doesn't notice you, but that's not really going to work very often for any kind of stress. But I educate people in pregnancy about this, because being in a stress response of fight or flight doesn't serve you when you're trying to have a baby. And actually, even though we wouldn't think it would be the case, what we need to be is in that relaxation response. Because to fight a tiger or a bear, what happens is the Our heart and lungs shunt all of the blood to the arms and legs to be able to fight or to run away. And what you don't need in order to fight or run away is a uterus. And so it shunts all of this oxygen and nutrient-rich blood supply away from the uterus and the baby, making it very difficult for that to do the job at hand in labor and birth. And then the baby can become distressed. So I use this video to be able to educate them. But what this video did was went one step further in explaining that the nervous system is made up of all these little soldiers, and that if we're in fight or flight, designed to be a temporary state to help us fight or to get away, that's fine. And then our body relaxes back down. It's no harm, no foul. Our nervous system can recover, our body can be okay. But what happens is we end up in fight or flight in this modern day and our current way of living, but we don't get back out of it. It's not a tiger or a bear. Often it's not even valid to have that severe a response by our nervous system to a perceived threat, because most of the threats that we deal with now in 2025 are in our mind. Our imagination runs away about the way we think things will go or should have gone or whatever it is, and we're nowhere near needing to fight the equivalent of a tiger or a bear or run away from one. And I think it's like 75% of the things that we worry about never even come to fruition. So we spend all of this time in our imagination, and even if it is real stress, it's not the equivalent of that kind of threat that requires such a physiological response from us, but we don't recognize that. And so then, because the state of stress response is not a temporary 5-20 minutes, whatever, and done and dusted, it is our life. It's day in, day out. It's relentless and unending. And so we are in the equivalent of our one vehicle that we get for the whole lifespan, and it's supposed to last us. And let's be real, we don't look after it to begin with, but then we're revving the fuck out of our engine endlessly and wondering why our body packs it in, for one. But what happens is, in order to be in fight or flight, we redirect our little soldiers from our immune system and get them over here ready to fight. And so they leave their post of protection and come over here ready for a fight that often never even eventuates. And what's happened is our boundary is now not guarded against illness, bacteria, and disease. And so I think we can all relate to a time where we've been like, oh my God, I've been so stressed. It's a worst time for me to get sick. I've got so much on at work or whatever it is. And then we get really run down and wiped, and it's the most inopportune time. But when you start to see how it's all intertwined, it's not surprising that when our stress levels are through the roof, that's when we get run down, because our little soldiers aren't there to guard the way that they would and keep us in optimal health. And that's when illness and disease can take over. Illness especially, but then that can in time lead to disease, because if we don't realize the importance of self-care in kind of decompressing this stress response so that we can return to some kind of peaceful, more peaceful existence, then it is inevitable that we will suffer the consequences of that. And at the end of the day, it's only us that's going to have to live with that. Yes, and those impacted by being our loved ones and stuff. But is the stress that we're dealing with really worth paying with our health? When you start to pull back the curtain and understand what's going on a physiological level, it gives weight to why it's so important to deal with stress. And it's not always easy to. I don't have the answers. I'm relatively stuck in a bit of a PTSD thing at the moment, but waking up with a sore throat and feeling like I'm about to get unwell and smashing the vitamins and taking supplements, but then being aware that, oh my God, I've been walking around with this. I can feel it. I can feel it in my chest. I just feel so uneasy and so on edge and so affected by the stress in my life at the moment that I'm not surprised that I woke up feeling that way. And when Mia was sick for the 5 days and she hadn't been able to pull herself out of that place of sadness, on the end of that illness, when she could get up again, you know, when you're that sick that you can't even move, and when you're coming out the other side, you can barely walk because you're so weak, because you've literally been laying in bed eating crackers, which is not enough to sustain life or energy on any kind of level. And so she was coming out of this illness and just so grateful for her health, so grateful to be alive. And I sat with her and discussed all of this and the fact that, when our body gets stuck in that fight or flight, that we actually ultimately end up paying with our health. And even her as a 16-year-old teenager, being able to see the contribution that she potentially made without knowing she was making it by being aware of a degree of stress, but not necessarily doing the things that could be done to de-escalate that. And I'm not saying that it was a 16-year-old's responsibility to know what to do. I'm saying that despite us trying to go, how can we kind of get you out of this internal environment and kind of help with this, it became a life lesson where she got to reflect and go, you know what, if I was in a situation like that again, where there was stress, where I couldn't stop the involuntary tears and I could feel it, was in fight or flight like that, I would take a more conscious approach to what do I need to do? What can I do that's going to actually calm my nervous system down, because I'm not going to pay with my health for this. Yes, it hurts and it's allowed to hurt, and whatever it is grief's a bitch, loss is a bitch, life is a roller coaster. It's inevitably going to be challenging, and it's going to keep doing that to us across the lifespan for as long as we have the privilege to still be here. So it's not about avoiding the stresses. It's about knowing how to recognize that this will impact me on a bigger level if I don't do something about it and calming my nervous system. And I'm not saying that I have all of the answers, because how you calm your nervous system may differ to how somebody else does. It could have been for her that she went off and got a massage or went to the gym, and she was doing all the right things. We were doing the things to try and increase her feel-good hormones and all of that. But for each of us, it might be some meditation. You don't have to go anywhere to do that. You've got meditation apps on your phone. It could be the resetting of your nervous system by bringing an awareness to your breath is the most powerful way to do it. So probably instead of running around getting her nails done, we should have brought it back to the basics of incorporating breath work and meditation to be able to physiologically help that nervous system kind of start to settle down, so then we could complement it with go to the gym, release the feel-good hormones, exert energy, all of these, put good food into your body, and then go get your nails done. Like, I'm not saying we did anything wrong. I'm not saying that she should have known better. I'm saying it was a really valuable lesson to learn at such a young age, because life isn't done with her. It's not done with any of us. And there's unfortunately more heartache and heartbreak on the horizon. Hopefully not too soon, and hopefully not too much. And hopefully what has happened is that she has been able to learn some really valuable lessons without too much pain, and definitely without causing anyone else unnecessary harm. And so yes, I wanted to share that because, as I said at the beginning, it would have been very easy for me to just go, I don't feel well and I'm in my grief and my PTSD. Everyone would understand if I skipped an episode. But then why? Because that's just making excuses. And life keeps presenting me with opportunities. Yes, the last two episodes have not ended up being what I thought they would be about, but life is giving me no shortage of things to talk about, that's for sure. So I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about is, how do we recognize when we're stuck in that survival mode, if you like? And it could be as simple as just recognizing that you feel on edge or exhausted. And how often is that? I think if we really give this attention, it's going to be pretty easy to see that there's a lot of time in our life, in this modern day living that we do, that we are in survival mode. We're not in growth and repair. And if we start to acknowledge that that doesn't serve me, then, okay, I'm going to stop making the narrative that I'm just exhausted, or, I just have trouble sleeping. That's been an unfortunate thing that I have done with that, is allow the narrative to just become the norm. Oh yeah, I have a lot of trouble sleeping, but I relive her death, so it's not surprising, And, well, okay, but my nervous system is that's the problem, is that I am still in a degree of survival mode, on edge, wondering how life is going to come for me next. And so, yes, there's definitely ways that I will look at taking my own advice and incorporating, again, the meditation apps and things like that I can do to help with my sleep, and probably getting off technology earlier, all of those things. But I'm going to start being more aware. And instead of just calling myself exhausted, acknowledge my nervous system, instead of just having the narrative, oh, that's just me and my grief, I have trouble sleeping, or it could be our digestion. It could be that we don't know how to relax. It could be a constant state of anxiety or noticing inflammation in our body. Or, if you're having recurring illnesses, then that's a good sign that your stress response is elevated or maybe potentially stuck in survival mode and therefore dysregulated. And that's what is leading to the reoccurring illnesses. Because if we bring it back to the basics of my little soldiers aren't there to protect me, and that's when I'm infiltrated, because that infiltration of bacteria, illness or disease wouldn't be possible if my nervous system was in growth and repair, and therefore my immune system was at its full capacity for how and why it is able to protect me. If we're trying to look at the effects of stress and where we sit on that scale of this end being fight or flight, the other end being growth and repair, a good indicator of that is our immune system, because chronic cortisol, stress hormone, weakens our immune system. That's what it does. So if you are in a inflammation, stress, disease loop of just becoming, you'll notice in your body, it could be injuries, old injuries flaring up, or noticing aches and pains and inflammation, and then more stress that leads to illness, disease. It's just a bit of a loop. So it's bringing an awareness to that and then seeing what can I do to help support. Yes, we can do things to support our immune system, but the biggest and greatest contribution to benefiting your immune system is to look at your stress, because stress is the leading cause of disease and illness for all of us. And when we live in fight or flight, especially after loss or trauma, it only contributes to it. And it's why emotional healing is as important as physical healing. It's not enough to just worry about the ways that we might be hurting or unwell or ill physically. If you're suffering the effects of loss, grief, and trauma like I am, then 100% we need to focus on what we can do to contribute to our own emotional well-being and healing, so that it doesn't negatively impact our immune system like mine has. And as I mentioned, it's things like breath work, it's grounding yourself with meditation, it's acknowledging when you need rest, and then actually being able to assert your boundaries with regards to that. Putting sufficient boundaries in place that do protect your rest, that do protect your sanity, that do protect your self-care, and creating the kind of, rituals in your daily life that facilitate that. And I'm realizing that I probably have dropped the ball a little bit lately. I have been in a state of hypervigilance of late, even before losing Bodhi, because of other stresses that just meant that my own normal capacity I have to acknowledge the need for self-care and balance kind of went by the wayside. And that meant the second insult of losing Bodhi on top of stress that was already there felt probably a lot worse than it needed to, without making excuses for people's behavior, because at the end of the day, the way that it was handled was wrong. It will always be wrong. And it's not wrong that I have been negatively impacted by this. I just don't want to get stuck in that place. I don't want to be stuck in a place of anger or resentment, because I know firsthand the horrific impact that can have on your immune system, on your health, on your longevity. And I don't want that. I'm very grateful to be alive. I'm very grateful to be here and have my health, and I don't want to give it up for anything. That's for sure. So anyway, it got me thinking about all of this and realizing that my body will break down under emotional strain if I don't look after it and look after my emotional and mental health and well-being as much as and as well as I would my physical, and that I need to start to prioritize my nervous system actually healing, and instead of falling into the trap of, I've been through terrible shit and I don't sleep well because I relive her death. So let's just stop that narrative. Let's just go, you know what? Grief has no timeline. It has no consideration for how quick you think that things should be able to improve or what. Now, I don't mention that it's been nearly 3 years as some kind of reflection as if I should be in a better place. I'm so fucking proud of myself. I'm so proud of the capacity that I have had to learn how to live and grieve simultaneously and be courageous enough to walk back through the flames of grief and horrific trauma every single fucking day. To be able to start to rise from the fucking ashes of my life and really begin to build a life that I love. And I'm so proud of myself for that. But as I say, I'm not mentioning that it's been nearly 3 years as if I should be doing better or I'm not doing enough, or I don't have any consideration for what somebody's grief should look like or how long it takes you to get back to your feet or to be okay. And because let's be real, you can think you are, and then grief will knock you on your ass, and you just, sometimes the better I'm doing in life, the worse the next tumble feels. And the more it hurts. But I mentioned that it's been nearly 3 years in reflecting of I've spent nearly 3 years saying I don't sleep well, but it's because of this. And it's a lot of time for my poor body to not know rest without medication. And I promise you, it is not rest. If you have to take a tablet to sleep, it is not rest. It is a forced temporary shutdown of a nervous system that starts back up as soon as you wake, never having rested and not settled in any way. It is like a false type of rest. And I don't actually know the last time that my body was able to rest peacefully. I just needed to share this because I'm confident that there's a lot of people out there that once you have the conversation, it's so easy to see it and go, oh my God, no wonder I get run down when I'm stressed. And if I'm going to sit here and go, I have so much on in the next week or month or stress around work, I am going to combat the effects of stress now by doing this, this, and this, self-care, rest, and boundary-wise, so that I can protect my immune system to hold the fort as I navigate what I can anticipate will be likely filled with stress anyway, because by balancing the two, I can keep myself maybe mid on the spectrum of, stress response versus relaxation response, rather than ignoring the importance of the relaxation response and growth and repair and shooting myself down the other end and paying with my health. And so that's why I wanted to share it. So I'm going to wrap it up because I feel like I've covered it, but I just wanted to share that with you all and to say how grateful I am to be on this journey with a connection that's facilitated by technology like it is, and that wherever you are, that you're able to listen, and in doing so, we connect in that way. I hope it's been of benefit, and I'm extremely grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Eslan Aloha. You can follow me on Instagram at Eslan Aloha. I very much look forward to sharing all of the upcoming episodes with you soon.